Welcome to the Screenplay Lab. I'm your host, Jeff Barker. I'm a screenwriter, and this is a podcast where we study and appreciate the standalone beauty of the screenplay as an independent literary piece, not just a blueprint for the film. We take one script, we break it down, we find out what's unique about it, what we love about it, and most of all, what we can learn from it. And this week, episode 22, we are breaking down Weapons by Zack Cregger.
So this one Wednesday is like a normal day for the whole school. But today was different. Every other class had all their kids. But Mrs. Gandy's room was totally empty. And you know why? Because the night before, at 2:17 in the morning, every kid woke up, got out of bed, walked downstairs, and into the dark. And they never came back.
This is a horror mystery that came out to the movie theaters just a week ago, and it is having major success, and no wonder why. It's a great screenplay to break down. It's a good way to look at nonlinear structure, multiple POVs. It's like Magnolia meets Pulp Fiction. So much to learn from this script, so I can't wait to get into it. So if you've been with me all these months, you know I don't even mention the word spoiler because I figure if you're with me, you want to get deep into the story, so it doesn't matter. But for this one, because it just came out a week ago, and if you like this type of movie, you definitely need to see it in the theater. I'm going to let you know when we get to the spoilers, so you can bookmark it, come back to it, get back into the script after you see it. But this first part here, spoiler free. We're talking about the screenwriter. We're talking about how the screenplay was written. We're talking about how it was produced. All that stuff like we do in every episode. But then when we get to the writing, I'll let you know. So let's meet Zack Cregger, 44 years old, from Virginia. He went to college in New York at the New York City School of Visual Arts, where he got a degree in film. He's married to Sarah Paxton, the actor. Started an improv group in high school, and they were so well known and popular that they stuck together. And then in early college years, they won huge awards for their improv. In fact, they won the 2006 Aspen Comedy Arts Festival for Best Sketch Comedy Group. There were several people in the group, but Zack and his very good friend Trevor Moore were two of the main players. The name of that sketch group was The Whitest Kids You Know. And they went on to have a TV career. They had a TV show from 2007 to 2011 on both the Fuse Network and IFC. So maybe you saw some of their sketches. And this started landing Zack some acting gigs. He first appeared on TV in the series Homicide, Life on the Streets. He also appeared on Friends with Benefits in 2011, Guys with Kids in 2012. And he was on the TV series Wrecked for several years. But his first writing and directing credits are for the movie Miss March in 2009. He co-wrote that, co-directed it. It's a raunchy sex comedy from that same sketch group. And it had horrible reviews, less than 3% on Rotten Tomatoes. He followed that up in 2011 with The Civil War on Drugs, which is exactly what it sounds like, with the sort of absurd comedy about a bunch of young kids who think that the Civil War is being fought to legalize weed. It's like a period piece. Also didn't do well with critics. And then around 2020, 2021, he decided he wanted to write something on his own, and he was fascinated with this concept of ignoring red flags, like getting yourself into a bad situation, knowing you're in a bad situation, and then just keep going. And keep going, and then you have to try to get yourself out. He had no outline. This is how he writes. He has an idea, and he just sort of puts scenes together. This happens, which causes this to happen, and then he sees if he can get out of it. This is his style. And this script is what would eventually become Barbarian, the 2022 hit. Cregger sent it to his agent, then they got it to a junior executive over at Vertigo. That's Roy Lee's company, big time. But once Lee was involved and it went around town, everybody wanted to be a part of it. So it kept getting a little more budget. Ended up having $4.5 million, and that was enough money to get some pretty decent actors Bill Skarsgård for one. That was a huge success. It made $45 million at the box office. And then since leaving the box office, it's become even more popular. It's one of these horror word of mouth movies. Like, have you seen Barbarian? In fact, when you go to generals around town, at least for a while, that's what everybody wanted to know. Do you have the next Barbarian? Have anything like Barbarian? So very popular. So you can imagine everyone was like on pins and needles waiting for the next project. What's he going to do? What can we make with Zack Cregger? And there were a couple of things that almost happened. For one, and we explored this weeks ago when we broke down the screenplay for Companion by Drew Hancock. He and Drew are friends. And the original hookup here was that Cregger was going to direct Drew's script for Companion. But the story goes that Zack saw that Drew was so passionate about it and didn't want anything to get in the way of their friendship, and they had different visions for the script. So he suggested that Drew direct it. Drew had no directorial experience, and it all worked out. And Drew wrote an amazing script and a tremendous movie with Companion, and Zack Cregger moved on. And that allowed space for him to do his next film, which is Weapons. And that's the one we're breaking down today. The Resident Evil franchise are going to do a new adaptation of that video game. He's writing that now and set to direct it. September of next year, possibly, is when it's coming out. He's also written a DC World screenplay about henchmen. You know, the guys who just like die all the time. So that could be very interesting. And also he's open to a sequel to Weapons and has some ideas, he says. So we'll see what's next. So how was Weapons written and developed? Well, remember his friend that I mentioned earlier, Trevor Moore? He passed away in 2021. And Zack says he needed a channel for his grief, a creative outlet. Not that the story was at all about his friend, Trevor, but that he wanted to put that pain and that grief into something. And that's what started this screenplay. He went back to his storytelling style of multiple POVs, nonlinear structure, and he just amped it up this time. He credits Magnolia and The Shining as inspiration. In fact, the 217, where the kids leave, they all leave at 217, and there's 17 kids and 2 people who are left over. He credits that to The Shining because you remember the room in The Shining was room 217. And Cregger says he started writing the screenplay. He had no idea where it was going for the first 50 pages. He was just had an interesting hook. He kept writing, and then when he figured it out, he knew he really had something. So he completes the script, and it goes out to market January 22nd, 2023, and within hours, he has multiple offers. The next morning, even more offers. And the winning bid is Warner Brothers. They sign on for $38 million production budget plus $10 million directly going to Cregger for writing, directing, and producing. And one of the production companies that was bidding on it and missed out was Monkey Paw Production. That's Jordan Peele's company. Peele was obsessed with this script and wanted to make this movie so bad, it's said that he was willing to pay money out of his own pocket above Monkey Paw for whatever it took to get it. And his agents and his team didn't make that happen. He was very upset about that. And it's said that that was contributed to the fact of him firing his agent. So this was a popular script. A lot was happening very fast, and now we have Weapons. Pre-production began in early 2023 with the major casting announcements, including Pedro Pascal was going to be the lead in this. Then the strikes hit, and everything got pushed back. And by the time the strikes resolved, Pascal couldn't do it because he had these other commitments that he had had previously. So they had to find a new lead male actor, and they cast Josh Brolin in the role. And then when they did that, you know how it is. It's like when you have a new person, you have to go back and look at all the other characters or actors and see the chemistry. So they ended up recasting everybody except for one person. So a whole new cast. And principal photography began May to July 2024 around Atlanta, although the film is actually set in Pennsylvania. Part of the filming took place at a real school. So Maybrook Elementary is an actual elementary school. It's actually Brockett Elementary in Tucker, Georgia. And then post-production amped up early this year with a 37-track score composed for the film. And the soundtrack for that was just released just last week along with the film. And the world premiere was right in Los Angeles in July, and then it hit your theater July 31st, I think. Maybe it was August, early August. It was just like last week. So this is fresh, hot off the press. It seems like my genre, the horror, especially the psychological type horror, is what's saving movie theaters. I mean, it's like they're really putting people in the seats. All right, let's start with the official log line of weapons. It is: when all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanishes on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. Here's my go at it. 17 children in the same third grade class walk out of their homes in the middle of the night, exposing a small town's buried issues. Screenplay statistics: it's 118 pages, 110 scenes. Runtime is 2 hours and 8 minutes, so that's about 1 minute and 5 seconds per page, and about one scene per page. And now for formatting, mechanics, and style. That's where we look at how the individual screenwriter teaches us as a reader how to read their individual screenplay. It's one of the beautiful pieces of art about screenwriting, is that they're all different. And this is a place where I'd say spoilers are ahead if you haven't seen the film yet. I'm not jumping right into it, but I don't want to filter myself, so good place to jump out, but mark it and come back to me. First thing we want to look at is location formatting. It's really the most unique thing about this script, and people who are able to actually read this script, it's the main thing people are talking about, debating about. Some people are calling them mini slugs. Some people don't know what to call it. Some people are saying it's a throwback to an old style. Some people were saying Zack Cregger invented a new format. It's really none of those things, but it is a very interesting way to format the screenplay. And the main thing about it is that it makes it easy to read. First thing to know is obviously he didn't invent this. There's a lot of screenplays that have some version of this, although his is really unique how he does it. And I also would not call it a mini slug, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And I also want to point out that this is very rare. You can see on 2829 an example, and you can see why a lot of people think that they're mini slugs, and I thought they were mini slugs at first, because you have a main location right here, interior Justine's home night, and then it goes into these subheadings where it says living room, staircase, bedroom. But you can see this is not like a mini slug. And if you're listening to this on the podcast and you can't see it, I can assure you it's not formatted in any way like a mini slug. It's more like a heading inside the text. So it says living room, colon, and then it tells you what's happening. Staircase, colon, says staircase. She stumbles her way up the steps. Bedroom, colon, we push in through the door on her asleep in bed. He also uses it for time change, like here on 71, where it says hours later, colon, the sun is set. One of the advantages over something like this, as opposed to a mini slug or even a whole other scene, is the amount of space that's saved on the page. You can see if this were even a mini slug, you'd have one or two lines before the paragraph. You have one automatically. So you say you have one extra line before the paragraph. You'd have one extra line after the slug. After hours later, there'd be another line, and then you would start with your paragraph. So this happens 120 times in the screenplay. So think about that. That's 240 lines extra that have been taken out. So that obviously saves a lot of pages. But I think what it does that's even more important is it controls the flow. I mean, when you're reading it, there's no interruption to like, okay, where am I? Like, in fact, the truth is, a lot of people, when they read screenplays, they don't even realize they're doing it. They just skip over scene headings when they really get into the story. You know, they want to keep going. Now what's going to happen? And sometimes they get confused. They'll go back and look at the scene heading. Oh, okay, they're inside now. That's why. But if you were reading it properly and you read every line and you read the slug or you read the scene heading, it still slows you down a little bit. It still takes you out of the story. But this is just like incorporates it. It just keeps going. I really love how this flows. And looking at page 100 is a good example of seeing how it stacks up against the scene headings. We'll just call them we'll call these headings versus scene headings, I guess. So you see, like, we have interior classroom, interior bus, interior shop, exterior neighborhood, interior Alex's house. And then under that, we have these headings: living room, upstairs hallway, bedroom. So this does line up like mini slugs, right? And I think that's why a lot of people think they are. It's why I thought they were, but it doesn't always work like that. If it was just locations inside a single space, then yeah, let's all just call it mini slugs. But let me show you some times in the screenplay when that doesn't happen. On page 107, we're under the scene heading interior house. And then these headings, the first one is bus. So the next one is store. The next one is front yard. The next one is living room. So not only are those locations not in the house, some are inside and some are outside, interior, exterior. So it's basically, he's just using it when he wants to, I believe, as a way to control the flow of the story. This is a first AD's nightmare. But, I mean, I'm sure Zack and his crew could easily put together a sheet that told everybody what scene is what. So I really appreciated it. And I appreciated seeing a new format. And I know a lot of people say, this isn't new. People do this all the time. And that's true. But the way he did it is unique. You have to admit, it's a little different. The next thing to look at is the use of title cards and the colors, how he uses those in the screenplay. Obviously, you have the title of the film here on page 3. That's like a light purple. And then when we get into the characters and the POV, so if you don't know already, this screenplay and this film is broken up into 6 points of view. On page 5, we get our first one. That's Justine. She is in pink to tell us who she is. This is the beginning of her POV. And it's 26 pages, which is the longest point of view in the screenplay, which makes sense. I mean, without her, there's really no story. And then next on page 31, we go to Archer. He's green. That makes sense since he's the hunter. And he has 15 pages of POV. Then after that, we go to Paul. That's on page 46. He has 12 pages of POV. And he's blue, right? Police officer. That makes sense. Then on page 58, we get Anthony, who is the unhoused petty criminal. He has 14 pages, and he's red. On 72, we get Andrew, the principal, 16 pages for Andrew, and that's in some shade of purple. And you might be saying to yourself, if you watch the film, wait a second, that's not the principal's name. The principal's name is Marcus. That's true. So they changed his name. In the version of the script that I have, at least, it was Andrew. And if you think about why they might do that, you have an Anthony, an Andrew, an Alex. It's a lot of A's. So sometimes it's a good idea to have your main character's name start with different letters, so in your mind you can easily categorize them and remember them. But they didn't do that all the way, because we also have Justine Grandy is the teacher, and she goes by Miss Grandy quite a bit because she's a teacher. And then the main villain is Gladys. So Grandy, Gandy, and Gladys. It's hard to even say. It can get confusing on the page. So but they stuck with that. Then on page 88, we get our final POV. That's Alex, the young boy, and he gets 20 pages, which is the second most to Justine. And he's some form of light purple. I don't know what all these colors are, but each person has their own individual color, which is pretty neat. And it breaks up the screenplay by POV. There are only 15 pages in the screenplay that aren't part of a single person's POV. You get the 5 in the beginning, where a lot of it's a voiceover, and then 10 at the end, which is sort of the climax of everything that happens. Speaking of naming characters, we talked about many times on the podcast about how if you really want to be nice to your actors, you want to give them a name so that sometimes even if they don't have a line, but they do something significant, so that on IMDb or on their credits, they're not, bartender or whatever. Here he takes a different approach. Alex's parents in the screenplay are mom and dad. And not only are they significant characters in the story, but they have a lot of lines, especially dad. And so every time it's dad, 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 mom, mom, mom. And that was not by accident. This is a point that he's making here, that the story is from the POV of Alex, at least, especially when mom and dad are involved. And to him, they are mom and dad. That's their names. He also uses POV in the script to show us cinematically how this is going to be portrayed in the film. So as you saw earlier with these headings or mini slugs or whatever you want to call them. There were several POVs. There's a lot in the screenplay, probably, I don't know, say more than 10 at least, where we get a specific POV. On page 11 is a good example. It says, she takes a final step and looks through the peephole. POV, empty porch, no one. She moves to the window. POV, nothing, empty porch, empty street. So what he's saying here is that the camera is going to be what she's looking at, most likely a shot scanning, like from a particular person's point of view. And even though we would classify this as mechanical writing, anything in the screenplay that is direction on the page, telling us exactly how it's going to be shot or how it's going to look, I would still describe this as cinematic because it's giving us some insight of, okay, I can visualize this in my head. For example, on 29, you see here we have the suburban street later, POV. In a car side mirror, we see Alex walking home. So you can easily visualize that shot. Above it, we have a POV, which is probably the largest paragraph in the whole screenplay, where it's showing us the villain up on the ceiling while she's having a nightmare. I won't go through all of it, but it says POV, a woman looks down at her from above. The ceiling surrounds her waist as if she were in a pool of water. So this is a mechanism that Cregger is using as part of his formatting mechanics and style. We always like to look at the montages in the scripts too to see, I think so far we're up to almost 20 different ways that we've seen formatting for montages. So there's so many ways to do it. He does it again by using these headings. He says montage, we're looking at page 3 and 4 here. Montage, various shots of frantic parents speaking with police in their yards, bedrooms, etc. Then you go down to page 4. Again, it's just in a paragraph. So it's not like listing scenes, listing shots. It's just sort of giving you an idea of what's going to happen. Montage, empty school hallways, empty classrooms, empty playgrounds, empty parking lot. So it's not a shot sheet. It's not like we're going to get these 4 shots. It's just like giving you a flavor. And finally, a look at the white space on the page. Tremendous for this script. Page 28 gives you a pretty good look at it. And it's like this quite a bit. A lot of white space, a lot of reading down the page vertically rather than horizontally. It just goes. It's a quick read because of how it's formatted. And let's take a look at that direction on the page as we do every week. We look at each writer and screenplay and see how they individually choose or choose not to show direction on the page so that you guys can debate it. Here, there's quite a bit. Now, this is a writer-director, obviously, but that doesn't always matter. And we have the family of the we's. There are so many we's in here. It happens 46 times and then many different ways. We've got the we see, obviously. We also have we can, we stay, we follow, we watch, we hear, we are, we hold, we cut, we pan, we clock, we race. No, not race, we rack. We catch, we feel, we recognize, we know, we saw. So a lot of variations from the we family. And the camera is mentioned 15 times in the screenplay specifically. If we take a look at page 2, we see the camera slides to reveal a little boy. And then just below that, the next paragraph says, the camera pushes past Justine toward Alex. Which brings me to my favorite direction on the page in this script is actually this scene right here. Where in the trailer, we see Justine walking into the classroom and there's no children in there. But when you watch the film and you read the script, the big surprise reveal is that there's one kid left. This is Alex. And she's hiding the kid with her bag as she walks into the room. But the script really lays it out nicely of how it's going to look in the film. It says she moves to her desk and drops her bag, and we stay behind her observing the rows and rows of unoccupied desks. It's eerily quiet here after the mayhem of the hall. Then we have more of Maddie's voiceover. That's the little girl. And the camera slides to reveal a little boy, Alex, sitting at a desk that Justine's body was blocking from view. And then the camera pushes past Justine toward Alex. So if you haven't seen it, you can still visualize it here. The camera is following Justine in such a way that her body and her bag are obscuring this child. She stops and the camera keeps going. And as it slides past her, we get an angle on this little boy and then pushes in on him. So it's really beautiful on the film. And it is right here in the script. All right, going to take a pause right here to just say thank you so much for watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. I'm very grateful for that. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, all that stuff. Leave a review. Share me with your friends, your screenwriting friends, your filmmaking friends. And if you are listening to this podcast, you can always watch it on YouTube and see the exact examples that I'm talking about. And if you want to know what's going on with me, you can check out my website, jeff-barker.com. That's where you can see what I'm up to. But thank you so much for being here, and we will continue now. Back to the podcast.
Thank you for watching my dad's podcast.
And now to the writing on the page, and some very good writing here. In fact, I admired Zack Cregger because of Barbarian. I thought it was an excellent film. I hadn't read that screenplay. But then when I got my hands on this screenplay, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this guy can really write. I mean, he has his own voice. It's very clear. He doesn't use unnecessary words very often. And when you're reading, you can truly see the images in your head. At least for me, it really connected. And for every horror film, you have to have some unique elements. It has to be something memorable specifically in that film that's only in that film. And for this one, at least the main thing that jumps out at you is this posture, this running, you know, how these kids run. I saw an interview where they asked him, why do they run like that? And he was literally sitting there thinking like, I think it's because I thought it was creepy. And it is. And how he describes it in the screenplay is pretty cool. So let's look at that here on page 3. It says, every child runs across the yard with the same curious posture, body erect, arms outstretched in a downward V like someone holding heavy bags. They run like the naked Vietnamese girl covered in napalm from the iconic photo. Those two descriptions, the girl in the photo, if you know that photo, and the one before that, the most important one, holding heavy, hefty bags. If you've carried luggage or anything heavy, you know exactly the posture that you go into. It describes it perfectly. We talked a couple of times about Zack Cregger's process of writing. He doesn't really outline. He doesn't have a fully formed idea or thought about a story. He has characters in mind. He has a problem that needs to be solved. He puts people in an environment, and then he starts moving them around, and he just writes. This happens, and then this happens because of this, and then this happens because of this. And he sees where it goes. And I don't know this, but I'm sure he's probably done this before and it didn't go anywhere. I mean, he can't be 2 for 2 doing that. But here he is in his own words describing exactly how he wrote this screenplay.
I didn't have an idea for the movie when I started writing the movie. I was like, okay, little girl telling a story. Takes place at a school. Kids go to school. Teacher, follow a teacher. Class is empty. Why? I don't know. Let's find out. And then like 2 sentences later, because the kids all ran out the night before. Okay. That's a hook I like. So I knew then, I was like, I have a good question. So then I probably wrote 50 pages before I even knew what the answer was going to be, honestly. So, you know, I got the teacher, I got the angry dad, and they're kind of doing their cat and mouse sort of a thing. And then it wasn't until about the midpoint where I had what it was. And that was a really good moment for me because I was like, this might not ever be a thing. I might not have anything here. You know, if I don't have a good answer, there's no reason to watch this movie. But
good answer.
I got one. I think I got one.
And he does not waste words when he does character introductions. You know, we've talked a lot on the podcast about being bold with your character introductions, using it as a way to show actors who they are so they can embody that person. You know, that's one school of thought. His is not, you don't get that. I mean, for example, when he introduces Archer, one of, if not the most important character, it just says 40s powerful. That's it. Principal Andrews, it says 50s gentle. Paul, the police officer, it says 30s large. So very basic. And I'm sure he has conversations with the actors, and during the audition process, he finds people to embody the characters. But for the screenplay, he's not that concerned with letting you know about it. One of the most memorable exchanges in the screenplay and in the film is when Archer and Justine have their confrontation at the gas station. It says, Archer walks up to her and says, I want to talk to you. She takes a deep breath. Justine says, Mr. Graff, I'm sorry. I don't think we have anything to say to each other. Archer says, I think you got a lot to say. And then Justine's line after that, and the way Julia Garner delivers it, I mean, you could just see the look on her face, the pain and the frustration and just being treated so unfairly, but also this chip on her shoulder, this edge that she has, this defense mechanism. I mean, Julia Garner really did an outstanding job with this character. Here's what it looks like in the film.
I want to talk to you.
I don't think we have anything to say to each other.
Yeah, I think you have a lot to say.
You and every other person in this city. Believe me, the message is loud and clear. I'm the problem. Got it.
You know what? I think that's the first honest thing I've heard you say. You are the problem.
What, you want to get in my face? You want to threaten me?
I'm not. Nobody's threatening
you're
you right
barking
now.
up the wrong tree,
Oh,
okay?
you know what? This whole victim persona that you're taking on, it might have the Stop thinking of yourself.
Marcus?
You and I are gonna have a.
And that scene in the gas station is really exciting. And it's about 2 pages on the script of describing that interaction, which is a lot for him because even scenes in the screenplay that are very meaningful, he keeps it sparse. Like he lets you know what's happening and lets you use your own imagination in a lot of ways. But this one, he gets into really kind of gets into the weeds here with great detail of what's going on. And you saw the scene. I mean, it is orchestrated on the screen exactly as it is in the screenplay. And I'll give you a little bonus here. Here's what it looked like when they shot it. Zack Cregger uses asides. We've been talking about asides a lot recently because a lot of our screenplays that we've broken down have them. I use them in my writing sparingly. I think that's probably the best route. But sometimes they can just give you some insight into the character without having to go on and on, without having to put them in a mechanical position to show it when you just want to keep going. You don't want to break story for that. We'll look at 68 as an example. You have Anthony who's in the tent and he's hearing noises outside. It's really scary. The snapping of twigs, slow footsteps, his eyes widen. Did I really hear that? So it tells you, you put it in italics there, and it tells you exactly what his eyes widened for. Why did his eyes widen? I mean, we have a pretty good idea, but this just very clarifies it. And of course, Ari Aster is the master of this in his screenplay that we broke down most recently. That was Hereditary. It was like 200 or 300 sides. He really relies on it heavily. Which, by the way, I have the editing screenplay and was going to break that one down next. But then I got my hands on this one, and it's just like so topical, so timely. So maybe we'll go back to Eddington. A lot has been made out about the gun in the sky, the AR-57. I guess that's what it is. AR-15 probably. I don't know about guns. But it's an assault rifle. And it having the 217 on it. And I mean, it's a dream, so you can do whatever you want in the dream. So, but there's been a lot of talk about, like, what did that mean? Was it a political statement? What is he saying about kids and schools and guns? And this is actually what he has to say about it.
I don't think it's about, to me, weapons is not an examination of societal malfunction. To me, it's more about my own personal stuff. You know, like the final chapter of this movie is very autobiographical. It's about, and this is not a spoiler, but it's examining the dynamic of children with parents who are alcoholics, which is my childhood. And the idea of a foreign entity entering a household and inverting the dynamic between a child and the parents, you know, the child feeding the parents soup and, you know, being the caretaker and that sort of a thing. So, you know, that it's much more about my own autobiographical stuff than looking outward. It's a looking inward movie.
Here it is on page 38. He looks up to see floating some 30 feet in the sky above his house is a gigantic yacht-sized AR-15 assault rifle. Archer stares dumbly at it, mesmerized. It floats there, towering above the trees. A moment later, numbers appear in red glowing fire on its stock. 2, 1, 7. And Zack Cregger wins the award for the best description of a sex scene. Like, I love it. It's on page 56. I'm not even going to read it because it's, you just have to see it to believe it. Page 56, interior bedroom night. And there it is. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm sorry. But the truth is, like, why does it matter how they're doing it or what they're doing specifically? Like, okay, we're going to take a moment in this film for a quick glance that, yes, they did do that. And that's really all you need to know. So it works here. And some more of his voice that I appreciate. Page 10, it says, later, close up on the television, Shark Tank is on and some idiots are pitching bullshit. On 66, we get a look at this one-sided phone call, which, there's so many ways to not only put a phone call on the page, but also how you format it. And, here he's being very specific about you're only going to hear one side of this phone call. You're not going to hear muffled response. We're not going to do a cut back and forth or anything like that. So you have Anthony here, and it's like him talking beat, him talking beat, him talking beat. I mean, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beats. But I'm pretty sure that's about exactly how it was delivered in the film. And then that classic scene at the end of the movie where the kids are chasing Gladys and they catch her. Whew. That's one. I'll say this about a movie and a screenplay, really. That last act, the end of the film, is what people will feel and think as they leave the theater. So if you had a tremendous movie all the way through and they were on the edge of their seat, and then the last 5-10 minutes, they're like, what? Huh? I don't get it. Or that was a letdown. I wasn't expecting that. That's going to be their general feeling about the entire piece of art, not just the last 5 or 10 minutes. In the same way, inverse, if the movie's sort of been dragging along and you haven't enjoyed it much, but you can be saved by the last 5 to 10 minutes of the film. This one didn't need saving. I'm not saying that, but such a memorable ending closure to this film. It's when the kids attack her, and it's described in graphic detail on page 116, 117. Some pull her hair, some gouge out her eyes, some pull her wrist, and some her ankles. Soon parts of her come loose. Her face is reduced to pulp. Someone bites off her ear. She's lifted off the ground by their collective pulls like a woman being drawn and quartered. Children leap onto the pack from the edges till it's just a bloody scrum with pieces of her coming loose in the frenzy. At some point, she stops screaming. So, a great description and excellent writing. I especially like that last line. At some point, she stopped screaming. So no need to go into great detail describing her dying and what it looks like. I mean, beyond the gruesome part. It's just, nope, she was screaming. Then she stopped. That's how you know she's dead. Or at least they ripped her throat out. She can't scream anymore. And the script clears up some things for me that I didn't quite catch or understand from the movie watching it. For example, on page 88, and this is on me because they probably used his name. In fact, I'm sure the teacher called his name, but I didn't put together that the bully, the kid who was bullying Alex, is Matthew, which is Archer's son. So it kind of makes sense, but I didn't put that together. It's obvious on page 88 when they describe what's going on. It even says that a larger boy, Matthew, Archer's son, rushes up from behind and body checks him into the wall. Alex whirls. There's quite a few differences in the script too, and I do believe that what ended up on the film was better. For example, on page 102, we get the story of how Alex brings home Valentine's Day cards. How the kids have to, write on the little cards and exchange, and everybody gets one. He brings those home just because he had them, and Gladys finds them, and she just takes them, cuts them up, and makes her a little potion so that the kids run to the house. In the film, it's made clear of what her motivation is. Why is she doing that? There's no, I didn't catch with 2 readings here. I didn't catch any character motivation of why Gladys wanted the kids. And the film is made very clear that the parents aren't cutting it for her. They're giving her some life, and she's feeling better, but she's not ready to live another 50, 60 years. She's not going to do it on them because she's probably using their life force too much. So she needs Alex to go to school and bring a possession from each kid so that she can use them to give herself strength. And that's part of the mystery in the film, is how's he going to do it? And he goes to school and he has some ideas. He sees trinkets, but eventually he settles on just pulling everybody's name tag off of their cubby. In addition to that being more character driven, also it's probably a problem because remember, this is set in Pennsylvania and Valentine's Day is February. So if this story were to take place in February, there'd be snow everywhere. And it's shot in Atlanta, so not going to be snow. So maybe that had something to do with it, or at least that was maybe what started the conversation. I don't know. Another thing that's different in the screenplay, mom and dad end up fighting each other. So Alex gets a hold of the stick and he's afraid and he pops it and then they turn on each other. Where in the film, they end up going after him, which creates a lot more tension, a lot more fear. And of course, we get mom popping through the door, popping her head through the hole in the door, just like in The Shining. And so it's a pretty cool movie moment. But on page 102, you can read about how mom and dad actually turned on each other. And then also there's no kid narrator at the end of the screenplay. Like in the film, we go back to, I believe her name's Maddie. Yes, Maddie. And she sums it up. She talks about how, everyone in the town was traumatized and eventually at least one kid started talking again, but it took a long time, which leaves it up to interpretation. Was she that kid or how was she involved? I was hoping to find that in the screenplay. I was hoping that Maddie would be in there somewhere besides the narrator, but it's not. So it's just one of those things. Doesn't really matter. We always like to see how the screenwriter uses music in their screenplays. Some avoid it completely. Some describe the tone of the music. Some give lyrics of the music. He does what is most common, which is to just give the name of the song and the artist if he wants that sort of specificity, which he obviously does. On page 3, we get Beware of Darkness by George Harrison, and that was part of the trailer. It's spooky because it's contrast of the mood. And then on page 16, we get Percy Sledge's At the Dark End of the Street. It plays as Justine sits at the bar, nervously sipping a vodka soda. And now let's talk about this nonlinear storytelling, which is truly the most unique part of the screenplay, where we talked about earlier, you have 6 different characters driving POV at different times. Barbarian had a unique structure in the fact that it had one person's POV until the going from 2A to 2B, the second act split, and then automatically, boom, we're in a new person driving down the road in a car who we've never seen before, we don't know anything about. And he carries the rest of the film, the screenplay. So he is no stranger, Zack Cregger, to interesting and unique story structures. This one's compared a lot to Pulp Fiction because it's such a famous film, Quentin Tarantino, obviously, where you have multiple POVs that give you a little bit more of the story, sort of like a puzzle, a mystery, so you can solve it. And that one, though, I believe there are mostly or only 3 POVs. I mean, 6 is a lot. I mean, he took a big bite here. Gone Girl has 2 POV perspectives, and they go back and forth in the same way as Pulp Fiction to solve this mystery. And, you have unreliable narrators like this one does. And the film this one's most compared to is Magnolia, the Tom Cruise film back in the day. And it has multiple characters. The difference, though, is that Magnolia is progressing forward. So you have one character is taking it to one spot, and another character jumps in, and they take it to this spot, and another character jumps in, and they take it to this spot. And you're learning about different things from each person's perspective. This one, it's one character takes it to this spot, and then we go back to the beginning, and another character takes it to that spot, and we go back to the beginning. So it never really progresses beyond this one part until you get to the end, and then it all goes forward with everybody. And this has nothing to do with anything, but since we're talking about interesting structures, there's always Memento, the Christopher Nolan screenplay, where it starts at Z and goes to A. The whole thing is backwards. Truly inventive and unique.
Great. That was good.
Matthew! Matthew!
Fear for Alex is very real.
Try and kind of coordinate so that as they kind of come over here, they kind of are touching your face. Okay. And I think that will buy you that.
So you want me to do that?
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
try to keep clean. This is you basically like catatonic.
Not while you're
And that is Weapons by Zack Cregger. And this is a screenplay I'd advise you to get your hands on if you can, because there's so much you can learn from the screenplay. Taking a close look at this 6-character POV structure, and not just that, but the formatting, how he uses those headings throughout. I mean, you can find that or some version of that in other scripts, but in here it really flows. So it's worth looking at it, see if it's something that you would incorporate into your writing or if you just want to appreciate. But that's it for this week, and I'm so glad you came along. And thank you for being here on the Screenplay Lab, and I'll see you next time. Please like, subscribe, and comment, all that stuff. Leave a review. If you're listening on the audio podcast, you can watch it on YouTube. You can always find out what's going on with me at my website, jeff-barker.com. But most of all, thank you for being here.